All right, folks. I know nobody's watched once again because I know y'all are watching the riots. Y'all want to see some crazy stuff. Little update. Apparently, everyone else on Twitter has found this out. But apparently, the dude that was smacked up in Dallas turns out is a Catholic. I think he's on Catholic Twitter. And he was saying basically, oh, white people kind of deserve what's happened to them. And so a lot of people went from feeling sorry for him to just being like, bruh. So that's kind of a brief update. I don't feel like looking up his Twitter, but you can find him. I don't know if he deactivated yet. He said he was going to, but still. He sent out, well, yeah, that guy that's getting his ass whooped, that's me. I mean, who would be dumb enough to do that unless you really want some clout? But I don't know. Anyway, take it for what it is. Let's go ahead and read something here. We're going to do this here. So we got War is a Racket by Major General Smedley Butler. So let's get into it. So this is 12 pages. I imagine we'll try to keep this at about 30 minutes. I mean, I don't know. Sorry there. So let's go over this a little bit here. So he was born in Westchester, Pennsylvania, 1881. Let's see. Ethel C. Peters. 2 Congressional Medals of Honor. Now, I thought about this. Now, he says capture of Veracruz, Mexico in 1914 and capture of Fort Riviere, Haiti, 1917. Okay. Distinguished Service Medal. So, normally you get the Medal of Honor for basically sacrificing your life for the greater good. You jump on a grenade, you're killing all these folks and everything else. You either get the Medal of Honor basically for sacrificing your life, or you killed so many people that it destroys your life. And for record, look up Audie Murphy. Very, very sad life that guy had. I don't know. He didn't drink too much, I think. He probably did, but, he did some movies in Hollywood, of course, outside of his own semi-autobiographical movie. But yeah, very, very sad life. He slept with a gun under his pillow, that type of thing. Very sad. Anywho, it needs to be put into context of how you win the Congressional Medals of Honor. It's a little bit different. Okay, so Major General, United States Marine Corps, Semper Fi. Retired October 1st, 1931. Okay, I'm just kind of lecturer, Republican candidate for Senate, Republican. They would still see him as died at Naval Hospital, Philadelphia, June 21st, 1940. So this is just before the surrender of France, I believe. Yeah. Contact the United States Marine Corps. Well, yeah, I'm sure the Marine Corps would love for me to call them up and be like, hey, can you tell me more about Major General Butler and his book, War is a Racket? Yeah, they'd probably just hang up the phone. Okay. War is a racket. It always has been. It is possibly the oldest, easily the most profitable, surely the most vicious. It is the only one international, sorry. Was right the first time. Sorry. It is the only one in which the profits are reckoned in dollars and the losses in lives. A racket is best described, I believe, as something that is not what it seems to the majority of the people. Only a small inside group knows what it is about. It is conducted for the benefit of the very few at the expense of the very many. Once again, this can, you have to remember is that one of the differences, this is the same type of thing that people like Vosh say. Oh, well, it's very few people control all this stuff for the very many. And of course, people say, but it's not anti-Semitic though. Just because a few of them are Jews, and they have to go off. They always have to do that because ultimately they can't fight, well enough against this propaganda. They all they can do is just, oh, well, they're just dumb. They're just, that's all they can do. Anyway, yeah, only a small inside group. Benefit of the few, the expense of the very many. In the First World War, a mere handful garnered the profits of the conflict. At least 21,000 new millionaires and billionaires were made in the United States during the First World War. Wow. That many admitted their huge blood gains and their income tax returns. How many other war millionaires falsified their tax returns? No one knows. How many of these war millionaires shouldered a rifle? How many of them dug a trench? How many of them knew what it meant to go hungry in a rat-infested dugout? How many of them spent sleepless, frightened nights ducking shells and shrapnel and machine gun bullets? How many of them parried a bayonet thrust at the enemy? Once again, he's trying to appeal to the veteran and appeal to the average, everyday Joe with this type of thing, at least in my view. The public shoulders the bill. And what is this bill? The bill renders a horrible accounting. Newly placed gravestones, mangled bodies, shattered minds, broken hearts and homes, economic instability, depression, and all its attendant miseries. Back-breaking taxation for generations and generations. Similar with what happened after the Second World War. But of course, what do we see here? There's a lot of... I've looked through this a little bit and, put this into context. This was done in, 1930... I'm guessing this is probably, 1938 or something like... When was this written? Let me see right quick. War was Iraq. It's probably like 1938 or something like that. Who knows? Anywho, let's go ahead and read more. For a great many years as a soldier, I had a suspicion that war was a racket. Not until I retired to civil life did I fully realize it. Once again, you have to question the motives. Question the motive, folks. It's only afterwards that people gain a backbone. It's only then that they gain a sense of morality. Only after they leave. When they were in it to win it. People like General Wesley Clark, of course, that has been mentioned many, many a time. People like, of course, what's his face? I can't think of his name now. Oh, my goodness. It's going to bother the hell out of me. Let me think. Oh, my goodness. Let me see right quick. Let me see. I'm trying to think of it. Oh. Norman Schwarzkopf. I mentioned his. Can be right next to who I need to look for. Tommy Franks. Colin Powell. There we go. Yeah, Colin Powell. People like Colin Powell, who, of course, was, you know what? I'm not going to say that. I'm going to stop myself. Put on the brakes where I was going to go. Because that's somewhat reactionary, this and that. I realize it, but I think you know where I was going. Basically, he did work for a Jewish shop owner. And, yeah. I was going to use a term that wasn't very polite. But, yeah. Anyway. People like Colin Powell, who suddenly grow a conscience and suddenly say, well, what we did wasn't good. But, at the time, it's something else. So, putting it into perspective. So it's very good that you talk about the mangled bodies and shattered minds and everything else, but the thing is that you still had a pension that you got from the United States government for your service in the United States Marine Corps. So, always put that into context, folks. Always put it into context. We're trying to learn a little bit from what we read in propaganda and try to break apart and disseminate what these folks are actually saying. That's what we're trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do anyway. Okay. So let's see here. Economic instability, depression, and all its attendant miseries. Well, the depression cannot be fully blamed on the First World War. There were many, many, many different issues, including, the idea that basically, let's go ahead and continue to spend money. Let's go ahead and, the Dust Bowl did have an effect. There are all sorts of different things. I'm not an economist. Everything else, I still slur my words out. I'm sounding like I'm drunk. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, for a great many years as a soldier, I had a suspicion that war was a racket until I retired. No, it's very ironic. Okay. Again, they are choosing sides. France and Russia met and agreed to stand side by side. Italy and Austria hurried to make a similar agreement. Poland and Germany cast sheep size at each other, forgetting for the nonce one unique occasion their dispute over the Polish corridor. Yeah, something that went back to the second, that continued on the Second World War with, with the idea of Prussia and everything else. It's a whole different thing. The assassination of King Alexander of Yugoslavia complicated the matters. Yugoslavia and Hungary, long bitter enemies. Well, the thing is, once again, let's clarify things a little bit here, is that, Yugoslavia, land of the Southern Slavs, as I've been told, is a little more, it's a very complicated issue. Italy was ready to jump in, but France was waiting, so Czechoslovakia, all of them were looking ahead to war, not the people, not those who fight and pay and die, only those who foment wars and remain safely at home to profit. True. The same thing with, I know people love to bring up Raytheon, this and that. You could also bring up, there are 40 million men under arms in the world today, and our statesmen and diplomats have the temerity to say that war is not in the making. Hell's bells! Hell's bells! They're coming for you! Hell's bells! Sorry. Okay. Are these 40 million men being trained to be dancers? Ha ha ha! That's so hilarious! You're so funny, General Butler. You're so funny. And now, can you give me a promotion to captain for laughing at your joke, sir? That's how it would be today. Okay. Not in Italy, to be sure. Premier Mussolini knows what they are being trained for. Wow, he kind of skipped ahead there a little bit, didn't he? Didn't even talk about Franz Ferdinand. Didn't talk about, the collapse of, Imperial Russia, and okay. Sorry there. Well, laundry's done for now. Let me close that door. Hold on, folks. Oh, mama. Okay. There we go. Okay. Let's go ahead and crack on here. Okay. Publication of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace said, and above all, fascism. Once again, he is now once again, I'm going to try to sound like now more of a big brain nibber, but now he's appealing to authority. Carnegie Endowment for International Peace said, above all, fascism. The more it considers and observes the future and development of humanity, quite apart from political considerations of the moment, believes neither in the possibility nor the utility of perpetual peace. War alone brings up to its highest tension all human energy and puts the stamp of nobility upon the people who have the courage to meet it. Undoubtedly, Mussolini means exactly what he says. His well-trained army, his great fleet of planes. Now, once again, I'm not going to fault the Italians. They did have a fair amount of things that did go on during the Second World War, and they can't be completely blamed. I will take the tick pill a little bit, as much of a lowbird as he is, to say that Italians weren't as bad as made out to be. Like I say, once again, this is something that a lot of lowbirds have used, and some minor left-wing folks, these are like baby leftists, as the term is used. But like I say, there's a lot of language in here that you have to be very careful of. His recent stand at the side of Hungary in the latter's dispute with Yugoslavia showed that, and the hurried mobilization of his troops on the Austrian border after the assassination of Dollfuss showed it too. There are others in Europe too whose saber-rattling presages war, sooner or later. Herr Hitler, with his rearming Germany and his constant demands for more and more arms in an equal, if not greater, menace to peace. France recently increased the term of military service for its youth from a year to 18 months. Yes, all over nations are camping in their arms. The mad dogs of Europe are on the loose. Oh boy, here we go. So here we have some more Americanisms. Definitely some more Americanisms. In the Orient, the maneuverings is more adroit. Back in 1904, Russia and Japan fought. We kicked out our old friends, the Russians, and backed Japan. Then our very generous international bankers were financing Japan. Now the trend is to poison us against the Japanese. What does the open door policy to China mean to us? Our trade with China is about $90 million a year. Or the Philippine Islands, or $600 million in the Philippines in 35 years. I would say, and we are bankers, and our bankers and industrialists and speculators have private investments there of less than $200 million. Let me stop right here for a moment. This to me sounds a bit like Vosh when he had his last talking to. Sorry if that's being intentionally loud. I'm just grabbing something. Okay. When Vosh was recently talking with a Marxist-Leninist, not leftism today, but the other Spurg that was a fan of Caleb Maupin, who really was a Spurg. I mean, he was absolutely a Spurg. But in that, Vosh, of course, said that trade is a form of imperialism. And, particularly, I guess, talking about China and the way they are operating in Africa. Because, of course, they have given very low interest loans to various countries and to businesses. To me, this is kind of the way diplomacy works. It doesn't matter whether you're a socialist country or whether you're a capitalist country. That's somewhat how things work. That's the way that you build trade. It's the whole idea of it, So when our learned friend, Mr. Butler, talks about $90 million a year in China or $600 million in the Philippines in 35 years, and our bankers have interest there of less than 200 investments there of less than 200 million. To me, this is just how economics works and how trade works. I hate to sound like a neoliberal in that way, but to me, it's like, you're still going to have to do trade with people, guy. I mean, I don't, it's like, it'd be nice for us to say, maybe I'm changing my views, because I used to be Mr. Isolationist and everything else. And of course, that's not realistic. I know it isn't. But there's a fine line between being, being someone of an isolationist or, wanting autarky versus being someone that you don't produce anything. That's the part of the problem that we have here in America, is that, everything else is sent overseas because we didn't want to pay people, basically. But such is the way. That's a whole other topic that I really don't have the intelligence for. I can barely read this, so. Okay. Anyway, let's go ahead and skip through this. Of course, for this loss, there would be a compensating profit. Fortunes would be made. Millions and billions of dollars would be piled up by a few munitions makers, bankers, shipbuilders, manufacturers, meat packers, speculators, they would fare well. Well, the thing is, what I would say here is that munition makers, sometimes, generals and people that were in the military, they later join, they may join, like Remington or something like that, or whichever company, or Beretta, Beretta in the United States. Of course, I know Beretta is Italian. I know. I'm just saying. So he is, of course, not talking about that. It's a little more complicated. He's not wrong, but there's a little more nuance. Yes, they are getting ready for another war. Why shouldn't they? It pays high dividends. But what does it profit the men who are killed? What does it profit their mothers and sisters, their wives and their sweethearts? What does it profit their children? What does it profit? Oh, boy. So now we're going back to appealing the everyday Joe. And yes, and what does it profit the nation? Take our own case. Until 1898, we didn't own a bit of territory outside the mainland of North America. Hold on. Let me think here. Until 1898, outside of the mainland of North America. Well, that's not true at all. Seward's Folly, which of course helped to buy what is now Alaska. So no, that's not true at all. Yeah. At that time, our national debt was a little more than $1 billion. Then we became internationally minded. Hold on. Let's see here. Our total favorable trade, bookkeeping basis, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the First World War, you didn't say anything. I noticed you mentioned 1898 and say nothing about the Spanish-American War. Not a word about the USS Maine or about yellow journalism. Nothing like that. So, it would have been far cheaper, not to say safer, for the average American who pays the bills to stay out of foreign entanglements. For a very few, this racket, like bootlegging and the other, oh boy. I mean, you're really going to try to do the whole, let's talk about Al Capone? Okay. We're going to try that, huh? Okay. We're really going to do that. All right. Other underworld rackets brings fancy profits, but the cost of operations is always transferred to the people who do not profit. True, but okay. So once again, he's just throwing out random numbers. He's done this a few times. Yeah, figured out that means $400 to every American man, woman, and child. We haven't paid the debt yet. I can see why Lolberts and other vaguely left-wing folks and just anti-war folks like to bring this up, but this is very... Even I, a not so learned person, sees that there are a lot of holes. This is like reading Swiss cheese, literally, because there are so many holes in this thing. Yeah. The normal profits of a business concern in the United States are 6, 8, 10, and sometimes 12%. But wartime profits, that is another matter. 20 to 60, 100, and even 1,800%. The sky is the limit. Sky is the limit, and you know that you keep on passing on. Sky is the limit, and you know that you can have what you want, be what you want. Sorry, I just wanted to wake y'all up a little bit there. Okay, all that traffic will bear. Uncle Sam has the money. Let's get it! Sounds like a Young Jeezy line. Okay. Am I dating myself? Am I making myself old enough that I still mention people like Young Jeezy? Okay. Of course, it isn't put that crudely in wartime. It is dressed into speeches about patriotism, love of country. Once again, let's keep that in mind when you talk about patriotism and love of country. And we must all put our shoulders to the wheel. Okay, yeah, that's true. Once again, people like, as we had read, Mr. Edward Bernays had also helped to include propaganda and included drumming up patriotism and everything else. So, yeah. Take our friends the DuPonts, the powder people. Didn't one of them testify before a Senate committee recently that their powder won the war? Or saved the world for democracy or something? How did they do in the war? They were a patriotic corporation. Well, the average earnings of the DuPonts for the period of 1910 to 1914 was $6 million a year. It wasn't much, but the DuPonts managed to get along with it. Ha ha ha. That's hilarious. Nice bit of irony there. Now look at their average yearly profit during the war years, 1914 to 1918. $58 million a year in profit, we find. Nearly 10 times that of normal times, and the profits of normal times were pretty good. An increase in profits of more than 950%. Take one of our little steel companies that patriotically shunted aside the making of rails and girders and bridges to manufacture war materials. Well, their 1910 to 1914 yearly earnings averaged $6 million. Really? $49 million a year. United States Steel. Anaconda, for instance. Utah Copper, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Gets boring reading all these numbers. Okay. Let's just skip through. Let's get to the hootie cat. Okay. And let us not forget the bankers who financed the Great War. If anyone had the cream of the profits, it was the bankers. Being partnerships rather than incorporated organizations, they do not have to report to stockholders, and their profits were as secret as they were immense. How the bankers made their millions and their billions, I do not know, because those little secrets have never come to public. Even before a Senate investigatory body. Once again, he is, as much as he talks about the fake patriotism that was drummed up to get us into the First World War, he still relies on the Senate investigatory body. This guy would be a hashtag resistance folk. He'd be one of the hashtag resistance folks today. He would be one of these guys like, look how much money we made in the Iraq War, but America's still, we can still make America great in our own way. It won't be the Trump way. This is really all this is, in my view. But here's how some of the other patriotic industrialists, more numbers. Skip that. Okay. There are still lots of leather left. And so the leather people sold your Uncle Sam hundreds of thousands of McClellan saddles for the cavalry. But there wasn't any American cavalry overseas. Somebody had to get rid of this leather. However, somebody had to make a profit in it. So we had a lot of McClellan saddles, and we probably have those yet. 20 million is mosquito nets. Yeah. There were pretty good profits in mosquito netting in those days. I'm glad I didn't waste my money buying this, because this is boring. Look, I get it. I get the numbers, but it's like, undershirts for soldiers cost 14 cents to make, and Uncle Sam paid 30 to 40 cents for each of them. Once again, that's capitalism. It's just the same thing as, for example, a CD, where they only made it for maybe $1, and they sold it for $24.99, or $25.99 back in the day. Nowadays, you can get them for $6. Because we've obviously moved on. You can go onto whichever platform and get it for whatever price. So, that's just the way it works in economies. But anyway, this just seems like, all got theirs, blah, blah, blah. Why, when the war was over, some 4 million sets of equipment, knapsacks, and the things that go to fill them crammed warehouses on this side, but now they're being scrapped because the regulations have changed. Yeah, this is the same type of thing. This is just capitalism. Once again, it's like Yeah, this is a good example of just how capitalism sucks and how, yeah, overproduction is not a good thing, is that we have to waste it because, we're just so worried about profit and every single piece that is made that we can make profit on. Yeah. One very versatile patriot sold Uncle Sam 12 dozen 48-inch wrenches. Oh, they were very nice wrenches. The only trouble was that there was only one nut ever made that was large enough for these wrenches. That is one that holds the turbines at Niagara Falls. Well, after Uncle Sam had bought them and the manufacturer had pocketed the profit, this same thing goes on today. The wrenches were put on freight cars and shunted all around the United States and never just find a use for them. When the armistice was signed, it was indeed a sad blow to the wrench manufacturer. He was about to make some nuts to fit the wrenches. Then he planned to sell these too to your Uncle Sam. Still another had a brilliant idea that colonels shouldn't ride in automobiles, nor should they even ride on horseback. One was probably seeing a picture of Andy Jackson riding a buckboard. Well, some 6,000 buckboards and the shipbuilders, the Senate 9 committee, okay. Even so, it has some effect. Okay. Oh, this is boring. Once again, great figures, but yeah. Of course, ultimately, the committee cannot be bothered with such trifling matters. Apparently, this says more than 12% of the regiment shall be wounded in battle. Who pays the bills? Yeah. Liberty bonds. These bankers collected $100 plus. It was a simple manipulation. The bankers controlled the security marts. Then all of us, the people, got frightened and sold the bonds at $84, $86. The bankers bought them. Then these same bankers stimulated a boom and government bonds went to par and above. Then the bankers collected their profits. But the soldier pays the biggest part of the bill. If you don't believe this, visit the American cemeteries. Once again, pulling at the heartstrings. 50,000 destroyed men. Yep. Boys with a normal viewpoint taken out of the fields and offices and factories and in classrooms and put them into the ranks. Mass psychology, they were entirely changed. We used them for a couple of years and trained them to think nothing at all of killing or of being killed. Then suddenly we discharged them and told them to make another about face. This time they had to do their own readjustment. Yeah. Sans mass psychology, sans officers. We don't need them anymore, so we scattered them about. Let's see here. Is he going to mention? Is he going to mention the Liberty troops or the troops that set up Hoover Towns and everything else, and sending in General Douglas MacArthur, to attack his own veterans division? I think the Rainbow Division. There's going to be no talk about that, is there? He's not going to talk about all this, yeah. So there's a lot, he leaves a lot of details out. And of course, I'm sure that stuff didn't come out necessarily, but still, the idea of, the troops wanting their money that the government didn't give them, this isn't mentioned. In the government hospital in Marion, Indiana, physically they're in good shape. Mentally, they're gone. There are thousands and thousands of these cases, and more are coming in all the time. The tremendous excitement of the war, the sudden cutting off of that excitement, the young boys couldn't stand it. That's a part of the bill. So much for the dead. They have paid their part of the war profits. But don't forget, the soldiers paid part of the dollars and cents bill too. Okay. All men are enamored of decorations. They positively hunger for them. During the Civil War, they were paid bonuses. In many instances, before they went into service, the government or states paid as high as $1,200 for an enlistment. In the Spanish-American War, they gave prize money. When we captured any vessels, the soldiers all got their share. At least they were supposed to. Then it was found that we could reduce the cost of wars by taking all the prize money and keeping it, when conscripting the soldier anyway. Then soldiers couldn't bargain for their labor. So he's almost there into becoming a Marxist, but I don't think he's quite there. He still defends the system a little too much. Until the Civil War, there were no medals. Then the Congressional Medal of Honor was handed out. It made enlistments easier. After the Civil War, no new medals were issued until the Spanish-American War. In the First World War, we used propaganda to make the boys accept conscription. They were made to feel ashamed if they didn't join the army. Yeah, it still exists today, yeah. Kill the Germans. God is on our side. It is his will that the Germans be killed. And in Germany, the good pastors called upon the Germans. God will that the Germans to kill the Germans. Yeah, okay. And the Germans to kill the Allies. To please the same God. That was a part of the general propaganda. Okay, once again, more atheist type of stuff. Okay. Beautiful ideals were painted for our boys who were sent out to die. This was the war to end all wars. No one told them that the ships on which they were going to cross might be torpedoed by submarines built with United States patents. They were just told it was to be a glorious adventure. Thus, having stuffed patriotism down their throats, it was decided to make them help pay for the war too. So we gave them a large salary of $30 a month. All they had to do for this munificent sum was to leave their dear ones behind and give up their jobs, lie in swampy trenches, eat canned willy when they could get it, and kill and kill and kill and be killed. But wait, half of that wage, just a little more than a riveter in a shipyard or a laborer in a munitions factory saving home made in a day, was promptly taken from him to support his dependents so that they would not become a charge upon his community. Then we made him pay what amounted to accident insurance, something the employer pays for in an enlightened state, and that cost him $6 a month, and he had less than $9 a month left. Then, the most crowning insolence of all, he was virtually blackjacked into paying for his own ammunition, clothing, and food by being made to buy Liberty bonds. Most soldiers got no money at all on paydays. We made them buy Liberty bonds at $100, and we bought them back. When they came back from the war and couldn't find work at $84 and $86, and the soldiers bought out $2 billion worth of these funds. Yes, the soldier pays a great part of the bill. His family pays too. Yep. When he returned home minus an eye or minus a leg, or with his mind broken, they suffered too as much. Yep, Liberty bonds were very bad. It was a Ponzi scheme. It was a junk bond, basically. It was a junk bond of the day. Chapter 4, How to Smash This Racket. Oh boy, here we go. Well, it's a racket, all right. A few profit and the many pay, but there is a way to stop it. You can end it by disarmament conferences. Oh. You can't eliminate it by peace parleys at Geneva. Well-meaning but impractical groups can't wipe it out only by resolutions. It can be smashed effectively only by taking the profit out of war. The only way to smash this racket is to conscript capital and industry and labor before the nation's manhood can be conscripted. 1 month before the government can conscript the young men of the nation, it must conscript capital and industry and labor. Sorry, that kind of sounds like fascism. Just telling you, buddy. That thing that you're supposed to be against that you were talking about in the beginning, that's kind of, that's called, I believe the word is class collaborationism. Just telling you. I know he's long dead, but still. Let the workers in all these plants get the same wages, all the workers, all present. Oh, okay. Well, now we're kind of Lenin-pilled a little bit. Now we're talking about that. Get the same, get the workman's pay. Yeah. Yes, and all generals and all admirals and all officers and all politicians and all government officials, everyone in the nation be restricted a total monthly income not to exceed. Okay, well now you're kind of like Nazbol. Now you're more national Bolshevik type of thing. You're kind of blending what Lenin said versus what fascism was like. Just saying. Maybe I was a little bit wrong in your statements. Let all these kings and tycoons and masters of business and all those workers in industry and all our senators and governors and mayors pay half of their monthly $30 wage to their families and pay war risk insurance and buy Liberty bonds. They aren't running any risk of being killed or having their bodies mangled or their minds shattered. And they aren't hungry. The soldiers are. Give capital and industry and labor 30 days to think it over, and you will find that by that time there will be no war. Yeah, once again, this is, maybe I'm a little too optimistic. Yeah, you are. Capital still has some say, so capital won't permit the taking of the profit out of war until the people, those who do the suffering and still pay the price, make up their minds that those they elect to office shall do their bidding, and not that of the profiteers. Another step necessary in this fight to smash the war racket is the limited plebiscite to determine whether a war should be declared. A plebiscite not of all the voters, but merely of those who would be called upon to do the fighting and die. There wouldn't be very much sense in having a 76-year-old president of a munitions factory, or a flat-footed head of the international banking firm, or the cross-eyed manager of a uniform manufacturing plant, all of whom see visions of tremendous profits in the eventual war, voting on whether the nation should go to war or not. They never would be called upon to shoulder arms, to sleep in a trench, and to be shot. There is ample precedent for restricting the voting to those affected. Many of our states have restrictions of those permitted to vote. In most, it is necessary to be able to read and write before you may vote. In some, you must own property. It would be a simple matter each year for the men coming of military age to register in their communities. Okay, they should be the ones to have power to decide and not a Congress. Few of those members are within the age limit, and fewer still of whom are in physical condition to bear arms. Only those who must suffer should have the right to vote. A third step in this business of smashing the war racket is to make certain that our military forces are truly forces for defense only. At each session of Congress, the question of further naval appropriations comes up. The swivel chair admirals of Washington, and there are always a lot of them, are very adroit lobbyists. And they are smart. They don't shout that we need a lot of battleships to war on this nation or that nation. Oh no, first of all, they let it be known that America is menaced by a great naval power. Almost any day, these admirals will tell you. The Great Fleet, well, nowadays the admirals are more worried about trying to cover up for their horny sailors and this and that, whether it's, Skyhook incident or any of those type of things, But, yeah. That was true of the day, probably. And also, of course, saving money and, wasting money because everybody had their own uniform. Now, of course, the Army and the Air Force now have the same camouflage uniform. They finally, it took that long. Only took 10 years, but that's pretty good, I guess, in bureaucracy. Almost any day, these admirals would tell you, suddenly and annihilate 125,000 people. And just like that, they begin to cry for a larger navy. For what? To fight the enemy? Oh my, no, oh no. For defense purposes only. Then, incidentally, they announce maneuvers in the Pacific for defense. The Pacific is a great big ocean. The Japanese, a proud people, of course, will be pleased beyond expression to see the United States fleet so close to Nippon's shores. Even as pleased would be the residents of California, where they too dimly discern through the morning mist the Japanese fleet playing at war games off Los Angeles. Okay, let's skip. Yeah. To summarize the 3 steps, we must take the profit out of war. We must permit the youth of the land who would bear arms to decide whether or not there should be war. We must limit our military forces to home defense purposes. We've already kind of done number 3 in some ways. It depends, yeah, it would be nice if there was a vote or some sort of, system that decided, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that. Go to the high schools and do that. But yeah, we must take the profit out of war. It'd be nice, but yeah. To hell with war. I'm not a fool as to believe that there is. Looking back, Woodrow Wilson was reelected in 1916 on a platform that had kept. Later, he asked Congress to declare war on Germany. Of course, I know everyone hates Woodrow Wilson. I know that a lot of the YouTube historians can't stand Woodrow Wilson. They hate him. They call him a racist. He's so evil. Whatever. In that 5-month interval, the people had not been asked whether they had changed their minds. The 4 million young men. Money. An Allied commission, it may be recalled, came over shortly before the war declaration and called him the president. The president summoned a group of advisors. The head of the commission spoke, stripped of his diplomatic language. This is what he told the president and his group. There is no use kidding ourselves any longer. The cause of the Allies is lost. We now owe you, American bankers, American munition makers, American manufacturers, speculators, exporters, $5 or $6 billion. If we lose, and without the help of the United States, we must lose. We, England, France, and Italy cannot pay back this money, and Germany won't. So, well, once again, my friend, I don't know when you wrote this, but of course, I guess you never heard of the Dawes Plan or the French and Belgians invading, the Ruhr Valley, basically to take control of the coal plants and everything else, and basically, but it's a whole different thing. Had secrecy been outlawed as far as war negotiations were concerned and the press been invited, it was shrouded in utmost secrecy. Well, 18 years after, the world has less of democracy than it had then. Besides, what business of it is ours? It is ours, whether Russia or Germany or England or France or Italy or Austria live under democracies or monarchies, whether they are fascists or communists. Our problem is to preserve our own democracy. And very little, if anything, has been accomplished to assure us that the World War really was a war to end all wars. Yes, we have had disarmament conferences and limitations of arms conferences. They don't mean a thing. One has just failed. The results of another have been nullified. We send our professional soldiers and our sailors and our politicians and our diplomats to these conferences. And what happens? The professional soldiers and sailors don't want to disarm. No admiral wants to be without a ship. No general wants to be without a command. Both mean men without jobs. They are not for disarmament. They cannot be for limitations of arms. And at all these conferences, lurking in the background, but the all-powerful, just the same, are the sinister agents of those who profit by war. They see to it that these conferences do not disarm or seriously limit armaments. The chief aim of any power at any of these conferences has not been to achieve disarmament, to prevent war, but rather to get more armament for itself and less for any potential foe. There is only one way to disarm with any semblance of practicality. That is for all nations to get together and scrap every ship, every gun, every rifle, every tank, every warplane. Even this, if it were possible, would not be enough. The next war, according to experts, will be fought not with battleships, not by artillery, not with rifles, not with machine guns. It will be fought with deadly chemicals and gases. No, never happened. It was fought with tanks, though. Secretly, each nation is studying and perfecting newer and ghastlier means of annihilating its foes wholesale. Yes, ships will continue to be built, for the shipbuilders must make their profits, and guns will still be manufacturers, and powder and rifles will be made for the munitions manufacturers must make their huge profits, and soldiers, of course, must wear their uniforms. For the manufacturer must make their profits too, but victory or defeat will be determined by the skill and ingenuity of our scientists. If we put them to work making poison gas and more fiendish mechanical and explosive instruments of destruction, they will have no time for the constructive job of building greater prosperity for all peoples. By putting them to this useful job, we can all make more money out of peace than we can out of war. Even munition makers. So I say, to hell with war! And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, that was War is a Racket. Overall, I would say it's pretty good. It's very unrealistic. And I think that, as he said, it's very optimistic. He did give some very good numbers. I think overall, meh. Kind of so. So like I say, hopefully someone will watch this later on, when you're not watching the riots going on. So hopefully you can do that and get something out of it. I don't know. I kind of skimmed through it, to be honest with you. It's only 12 pages. But, yeah, interesting to say the least. Hope y'all enjoyed that. See you later. Bye-bye.